and teacher of the year. And she did such a good job that they promoted her to assistant principal. And so there's a new horticulture teacher there, which she's mentoring, and Mr. Watkins is his name. Okay. So normally I talk about, all the things that we do as master gardeners here, but I think we're just going to skip that part today because I see lots of familiar faces. Welcome.
Thanks.
What else? Let me see here. Oh, I need to tell you about next. So today's Master Gardener program is aeroponics and grow towers. Next month, on the second week of the month, we are doing hardy annuals with Miss Lucy Stevenson, who is one of our own master gardeners. So please join us week today and next month. We are doing hardy annuals with Miss Lucy Stevenson, who is one of our own master gardeners. So please join us today and next month.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
If you're joining us by chat, or joining us by Zoom, you can have your questions answered by chatting in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And at some point during the program today, we will stop and answer questions for you.
Yeah, so as Connie said, I have previously, for the past 12 years, been the ag teacher / horticulture teacher over at Midway High School. So into a new role now, but we have a new ag teacher, Ryder Watkins, who hopefully he has Connie's contact information, and hopefully we'll be getting some support there for him as he's a new teacher and continuing the horticulture program. So a little back, I guess, kind of history of how this came to be for us, because I think this story can relate to a lot of people, a lot of different circumstances, kind of whichever way that you twist it there. But we're a very rural school. So if you know or don't know where Midway High School is, but it's down Highway 58 and you cut off Highway 72. And so it's a super rural area. And we have a lot of kids who are free and reduced lunch, a lot of kids who don't have access with their families to fresh produce. And so as I started the program, I graduated there from Midway. And when I graduated, the program was pretty strong. And then over the course of, 5 or 6 years, it went downhill drastically. And I think we counted in a 7-year period, there were like 8 ag teachers in there. So the program was in shambles. And so I started and realized real quick that we were not meeting the needs of a specific population of students there at Midway High School, because they needed the ag program, but the ag program just basically was non-existent at that time. So as I started thinking of what was it that we could do to help these kids, a lot of our students that are in the program, we have a lot of different learning levels, special ed all the way up to, the valedictorians of your class. So as we started looking at that, we did our spring plant sale, which is huge. And we do our fall plants and we do poinsettias, but we were still missing a link to really that population that needed more. And so I went to a conference, and aeroponic, hydroponic gardening was one of the things that I sat in on. And as I went through it, I looked at the different lessons that could go with it and the different level of students that could be attracted to it. And so this is where it kind of gets to the general population of how you can do this. There are so many different things with these grow towers that you can teach an elementary student, which we partner with Midway Elementary to do, all the way up to college level, and these are at Disney. So there's so many different things you could do. And I thought, this is something that my low level of learner all the way up to my upper level learner could participate in. And so we started that. And then I started realizing we have lettuce coming out our ears. Plus we have 52 raised beds, 6-foot raised beds at our school that we grow a ton of produce in. What am I going to do with all this? And so that's whenever we really shifted to, we're going to provide this to our cafeteria. We're going to provide this to our teachers, our faculty and staff at all the schools. And then any student that wants to take it home, they get to take as much home as they want to. And then what we have left goes to the local food bank. So that's when I really thought, this is something that could not only shift our learning for different students, but it can also shift to where they have some nutrients at home that maybe they wouldn't otherwise have. So that's kind of how we got into it. That's a little bit of the backstory. So hydroponics hydro is the water. And so typical hydroponics is, if you have a hydroponic grow table like this, which we have, you have trays where the plant sits in the top and then your roots are underneath, but it's in water all the time. So the aeroponics comes in, aero meaning air. So it's aeroponic, hydroponic tower systems. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as I said at this conference that time, they kept telling us it was the way of the future, the way of the future. And so I'm going to talk about, is it the way of the future, or is it something else that we can add in for a hobby and also some production at a commercial level? So I want you to have a visual of what our towers look like as we talk. This is in my greenhouse there at the high school. I currently have 14 of these towers. You can change these to different heights. This one has the cage around it, and we'll talk about why that is or is not important depending on what you're growing. But here we've got chard, we grow lettuce in it, spinach, all the herbs. We grow primarily leafy greens in ours. You can grow a little bit of everything, but this is the grow tower as we talk. Okay, so in the tower, you know, it's like you get the pamphlet on everything and they tell you all the good stuff. It's going to grow 30% faster and you're going to save this much water and do all these things. And then you think, is this a sales tactic or does this really happen? And so what I want y'all to know as I'm talking about this, the ones that I'm talking specifically about are Tower Gardens by Juice Plus. I do have where I can sell these, but only because I use my discount at the school, but I don't sell these to the general public. So as I'm telling you this, I'm not trying to sell these to you. I get nothing from this. I'm telling you this because this is what has worked for me. So as we go through this, and as I'll give you all the link to their website later, and you can log on and kind of read about it yourself, I can tell you that it does grow at least 30% faster. It does. Some days I'm like, please slow down. I just don't have it in me to pick more lettuce today. But yes, it grows significantly faster. You truly do use a significant amount of water, less amount of water than you do in a typical garden. You can grow these anywhere. I could have brought the one that I wanted to bring actually had grow lights on it, and I could set it in this corner here. And as long as we can regulate the temperature in this room, I could grow lettuce inside this room all year long with no issues because it has lights around it. So you can grow anywhere with these small spaces. You can make your tower to where it's, 3 trays high. So these, most of mine are 8, or you can make it to where it touches the ceiling. Okay, it's all dependent upon the space that you have. So as we're going through these, a lot of the stuff that they promote, it really is true. And I've got 3 years of experience doing it, continuing to think, something's going to happen, and it hasn't yet. So, but some of the things that they tell you, it's colorful, it's tastier, it's better smelling, and it's incredibly nutritious. So one of the things when we went to this conference, they had it growing and they had the lettuce, and as they washed the lettuce, the water was green after it. And she said, do you see how we've washed it and the water is green? And I'm like, at first I was, yeah, it's kind of, she's like, that's a good thing. And I said, why is that a good thing? She said, because the amount of chlorophyll that is in the lettuce, it's as you wash it and you just rinse it, this is how healthy and nutritious it is versus being directly in the soil. The soil absorbs some of the sunlight, the other plants around it absorb some of it. And so there's not as much chlorophyll in it, and the nutrient level is significantly more. So if you ever own one of these, or you rinse your produce, your leafy greens, especially, and your water's green, that's a good thing. Okay. So when my water is not green, I know my nutrient levels are off. So it's an advanced form of hydroponics, as I talked about. Basically, it's growing plants in a mist environment. And Connie was telling me about somebody that she knows who their plants rotted in their tower. So with the tower, you have a rock wool. Okay, rock wool is what is in insulation. And so it is a little itchy, but it doesn't have what is it in insulation?
Fiberglass.
Yeah, it doesn't have the fiberglass in it. It's just the rock wool part. So they're little cubes. It's a 2x2 cube, and they're very small. Yeah, and so whenever you start those, which is an easy process, and they brought me, the Master Gardeners brought me a lot of trays last year to start in. So you have a little plastic container, okay, just like you buy at the Dollar General. That's where I buy mine at. You start your rock wool in it, you start your seed. So the amount of time to start a seed in this rock wool compared to in the ground is about 75% quicker than if it's in the ground. Okay, so if I would have today brought a tray of rock wool and started a lettuce seed or a tomato seed.
Okay, so
Within
if I
about
would have
7 days,
today
it's
brought
going
a
to
tray
be
of rock
germinated
wool
and I'm going to
and
have my
started
first true
a
leaves
lettuce
on it.
seed or
Okay, it's quick.
a tomato seed.
Within about 9 days,
about
it's already
7
ready to
days,
put in the
it's
tower.
going to
Okay,
be
so that's
germinated
how
and I'm gonna have my
quickly
first true
it
leaves
grows
on
in
it.
the rock wool.
Okay,
So
it's
it
quick.
really, really grows quick.
Within about 9 days, it's
Whenever you're
already
starting
ready
it,
to
it's
put in
just
the tower.
water. There are no
Okay, so
nutrients in
that's
the
how
soil at
quickly
all, or in
it
the
grows
water.
in the
It is
rock wool.
just the
So
water
it
at
really,
that
really
point.
grows quick.
Once you transplant it over,
Whenever you're
it has a
starting it, it's just
big
water. There are no
basin
nutrients in the soil
at the bottom, which I'll
It's
show you
in
here
the
in just a
water.
second.
It
There's a
is
green
just the water
basin
at
that
that
goes
point.
here,
Once
and
you
it's filled with
transplant it
25
over, it
gallons
has
of
a
water.
big
And in that,
basin
you have
at the
nutrient
bottom,
A
which
and
I'll show you
nutrient
here in
B,
just a second.
which
There's a
has
green
like your
basin that
nitrogen,
goes
your
here,
phosphorus, all
and
that
it's
in
filled with
liquid form,
25
and you put
gallons
it
of water.
into
And in that,
your
you have
your
nutrient
bottom,
A and nutrient B,
the
which
water. It
has,
mixes
like,
it
your
up, and it
nitrogen,
has a
your
submergible
phosphorus, all
pump,
that in
which
liquid
pumps it to the
form, and you
top
put it
and then
into
filters it back
your,
down. So at no
your
point
bottom,
is your rock
the
wool or the
water, it
roots
mixes
ever
it up,
sitting
and
in
it
water.
has a
Okay,
submergible pump,
never
which
are they
pumps
in
it to the
water
top
for longer
and then
than
filters
just the
it
amount
back
of time
down.
it takes
So
to
at
drip
no
off.
point is
So
your rock
every
wool or the
15
roots
minutes, it
ever
waters
sitting
for
in
3
water.
minutes.
Okay,
Okay, that's
never
the
are they in
general kind of
water for
how that
longer
works
than
there.
just the amount of
So it
time
is a
takes to
totally
drip off.
soilless medium.
So
There is
every
no
15
soil at
minutes,
all.
it waters for 3
And
minutes.
there's a
Okay,
lot of
that's
different
the
things that
general
you can
kind
do,
of
but the
how
rock
that
wool
works
is
there.
generally
So it
the
is a
best
totally
for it.
soulless medium. There
All
is
right,
no
so
soil
I just
at
covered
all.
this a little bit,
And
but
there's
this is
a
the
lot
rock
of different
wool.
things that you can do,
Okay,
but
it
the
is
rock
just these
wool
little
is
cubes.
generally
They're
the
super
best for it.
affordable for, I
All
buy
right, so
these
I
like
just
200 and
covered this a
300
little
at a
bit,
time,
but
and it's
this
like
is the
40
rock
bucks.
wool.
So that
It
would
is just
last
these
me
little
for a
cubes.
long
They're
time.
super
So the rock
affordable
wool
for,
is not
I buy
expensive.
these like 200 and 300
And
at a
then
time, and it's like 40 bucks.
this
So
has a
that
little
would
hole
last me
here.
for a
Just
long
set your
time.
seed
So the
down in
rock
it,
wool is
and you
not
put a little
expensive.
perlite on top of it.
And
A little
then
vermiculite on top of it,
this
and that just
has a
keeps
little
the seed
hole
in place.
here.
Your
Set your
roots
seed
grow out
down
from
in
the
it,
bottom here.
and you put a little
And I'll show you what
perlite
one
on
looks
top of
like
it.
in our
Little
greenhouse in a
vermiculite
few
on
minutes,
top
so
of
you
it,
can
and that
see
just keeps the seed in place.
once the roots
Your
grow.
roots
So
grow out from the
say
bottom
this
here.
was a head of
And I'll show
lettuce
you
that you're
what
ready
one
to
looks
pull
like.
out. The roots would be like at my hand down here when you pull it out. Okay, because there's nowhere for the roots to get stopped at the soil. There's nowhere. It is just healthy roots. Okay, I have not ever eaten the roots. That's just something that I don't know how to cook the roots, but a lot of people do. So they actually cook the roots of that into different things. They let them dry out, use them for different things. I never have done that. But they're super healthy. And then this is what the top of one looks like. So it pumps up the center at the top, it puddles here, and then it just sprinkles down from there. This is what the inside interior grow tower looks like. So it has the lights around it, and then it's on a timer. And so it's just, it comes on and off as you set, depending on what you're growing. And then this is them putting the nutrients in. Okay, so we talked about the waters in the bottom. Within a few weeks, it's time to harvest. So I talked that your seed has been started within 7 days. You've got your true leaves. Then you're transplanting it over from your water into your tower within about 9 days. From the time that I start a lettuce seed until I harvest it from the to the cafeteria is about 25 days. Okay, and it is full grown, completely ready to harvest. I prefer to grow leafy, loose leaf lettuce, so I can trim off the exterior and I allow the interior of that lettuce to continue to grow. So if it's in my garden at home, I'm pulling the whole plant up and I'm taking it in and I'm chopping it off romaine or whatever it is. I really like the gourmet blend, which they send you seeds of. But I chop it off and it's done in my garden and I move on. In this, it is ready to harvest in 25 days. But I'm just trimming it. And then I'm leaving the little sprouts that are still in the middle that are growing. I'm leaving that. And in another 15 days, I have another full head of lettuce to harvest. So you're really, I mean, the amount of waste that you get from this is so minimal because it continues to get the nutrients directly to it. So anything that is leafy green, and I'll talk about kind of the difference of like your tomatoes and your cucumbers in it, but anything that's leafy green, kale, all of my herbs, all of those things, they just grow really quickly and really well. Thinking of cucumbers, tomatoes. So the only, I guess, thing that I would say, when they market these, they tell you can grow about anything in it. And that really is about the truth. Anything that doesn't have a root, like you wouldn't do carrots or onions or anything like that, any tubers in it, but anything that like a tomato, cucumbers, peppers, eggplant, strawberries, all those things you can do in it. So, but with tomatoes, cucumbers, the eggplant, for me, it takes up too much room because you still have your vines that are going down, and you still have, the tomatoes get so big that it blocks what's above it. So for me, that has not been successful. We've done a lot of trial and error there. So I will tell you in that regard, I don't think that it's very beneficial. However, we have 4 towers that we grow just strawberries in, strawberries only. And it is the sweetest strawberries that I've ever tasted. And we serve those in our cafeteria, we serve those on our salad bars, and we give those to students as they come in. I would say that the yield that you get off the tower for strawberries is probably not as much as you would in the soil if you're growing directly in the ground. I will say that that yield tends to be a little less, but the nutrient value of it is significantly more. However, the yield of everything else that we've grown is phenomenal compared to in the soil. Okay, so pros and cons. Is it the way of the future? I'm very realistic in production farming and what that looks like for feeding, millions and millions of people. Personally, I will say that just generally, you'll hear a lot at the conferences for these that, rural areas are being developed out more. Farmland is going by the wayside. It's turned into a subdivision, which is absolutely true, as we all know. However, I don't think it's feasible to feed our general population with grow towers as they are now. So no, as I'm speaking to you, it is not coming from a place of, I think that this is replacing production farming, because I definitely do not think that. However, here's what I do think. I have seen with just our 14 towers, how much we can grow and really produce for our schools. I've seen that it's not only for our schools, but our students and our community. So as I think about myself personally and for my family, and as you think about this could work at my house, absolutely this could work at your house. This can work for, multiple families that share in. And I'm going to show you some pictures where, especially in California, this has kind of taken hold on rooftops. So they have, a need for fresh produce, but they don't have the space for it. And so they're doing a lot of rooftop farming with these grow towers. But this is absolutely something that is very viable for families. And so as I think about my own family, and we have, these towers for us personally, there's a lot that I still grow in the ground, but this absolutely replaces a lot of it. And the cost difference is phenomenal. So I would say it's more for hobby gardening, which is what, probably most of us in this room do anyway, is hobby gardening. It is great for, I've talked to many assisted living homes, because in Nashville, they have these in assisted living and nursing homes. And in this area, I would love to see that. And so we worked on a lot of grants that we're waiting to hear back on to see if that's something we can do within this area. But for elderly, for those that they can't get out, or maybe a lot of students that we have that have disabilities do really well working with these towers because they don't have to bend down. It's not labor intensive. So very low maintenance. So the general maintenance on mine, I started, so right now they're all soaking in vinegar, and that's just where we finished out in the spring and kind of left them. And so we're soaking it in vinegar. We don't put any chemicals in these at all that's toxic. And so they'll soak, we'll rinse that out. We'll do another soak over, and we'll wipe down with some Dawn dish soap. And then those will set out in the sun for a few days just to kind of bake, get anything else that's left on it. We put them together, and we will grow 2 crops of lettuce, and then we will disassemble, which is super easy to do. It's a one person can do it. Okay. It's easier if you have a couple people just for time, but one person can easily do it. I do that rinse process again, put it back together, and that's the maintenance of it. Okay. The submergible pump I've had now for 3 years. That's the only piece of it that is automated. Okay. And it's a timer. You have a timer with that submergible pump. But besides that, everything else, there's no mechanics to it. It's just plastic pieces and metal rods. So super low maintenance. And the amount of time, I would say, so I put a few on pros and cons that are kind of the same. Reduce time and money, but then you also see time consuming. So I'll talk about that. Reduce time meaning you just let it grow. You don't have to go out and worry, is it watered? Because it's getting automatically watered every day or every 15 minutes. Do I have to worry if there's a lot of pests on it? No, because the pest for these is so minimal compared to things that are in the ground. So you're not worried about having to spray. The amount of money reduced, really, you have the cost of your seed, you have the cost of your rock wool, which is very, very low, and then the 25 gallons of water for one lettuce production, I may have to refill that one time, maybe. So usually it's about 45 gallons of water that it circulates through, and that's it. So those are a lot of the pros. Some of the cons, it's not ideal for large spaces, meaning, this isn't ideal for you to put 50 in your yard and decide this is how I'm going to grow. To me, that is not very feasible for a family. Now, if you have a business like in California where they are doing this for production and they've got a team of people that come and are employed to do it, that probably is feasible. But for a family, it's not meant, I would say, really over 5, and it can become time consuming because you do have to check your pH. You do have to keep, make sure that, it depends on what you're growing. Some things use more water. So it could be something that, if you've only got one, I would say 45 minutes a week is all you're spending on it. But as you add more to that, it could become a couple hours a week. And that's just dependent up if you have the time to do it. Pest as a con. The only con that I've seen with pests are when I grow tomatoes and cucumbers on it, okay? And I get a lot of white flies that then get mixed in with my lettuce. If I'm just doing leafy greens, I really don't have any pest problems. So if you're wanting to grow it for multiple things, then that can kind of become a problem at that point with some pests. Yeah.
Ask a question. So are these inside, outside,
Yeah.
move back and forth?
Yeah, it's totally
And how do you
portable.
make sure they're pollinated?
So we're going to talk about that in just a second. Don't let me forget the pollination part though. We'll talk about how you move on. Limited on plant varieties. We talked about that a little bit, just yes, they definitely market it as you can grow a whole lot of things, but you kind of are a little bit limited, but that's okay. Because for us, we'll do our tomatoes, our cucumbers, our eggplant, all of our peppers, all those things in the ground. And then we just do all of our leafy greens and herbs on the towers. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. And then time consuming if you have multiple of these. Okay, so Connie asked, how do you move it back and forth, and can it be inside or outside? And the answer to all of that is yes. It can be inside or outside. Inside with the lights. We only have one that has lights on it, and we transfer that one from our classroom to the classrooms at the elementary school just so they can see the different processes of it. And it grows great inside. For me, it was almost could be a problem just because at the school, our heating and air shifts at night to save money. So I couldn't regulate at the school setting the temperature like I would have preferred. So in, the winter, whenever it's really cold outside, during the day, I could have it to where it's warm in there. But then they drop that down at night, and so it would get too cool. Or during the summer, I've got the air on while we're at school, but then they would drop it, turn it up so that then it would become warm in there. And so at night, it was a little bit of an issue. But at home, it's very easy to regulate. Our other 13 towers are outside. Okay, so in the winter, they're in our greenhouse, and I don't have any heat. Once the poinsettias are done, I turn off my heat and I just keep ventilation going. And we do lettuce because lettuce can grow in very cold temperatures. So I don't heat them outside in the greenhouse at all. I just have them there so that, if we were to get a good frost or if we were to get ice or something like that, they're protected. And March 1st, they go outside because I need extra room for the spring plant cell. And they stay outside the whole rest of spring, summer, until it starts to get too cold and chance of ice again or freezing, and they go back in the greenhouse. So you can use them literally anywhere. As far as how you move them, I have 2 that are on wheels, and you could move it anywhere in this room, one person with your hand. Very easy to do, not hard to do that at all. That would become a problem if they're in your yard, or if they're not on something. If they're on rocks, that's an issue. But if it's on concrete, paper stones, anything like that, they are very easy to move about. And then the rest of mine are not on wheels because I just leave them outside. And whenever it's time to move them in, I empty the basin, we move them in, and then you're good to go from there. So not hard to do in that. Let's see. So if you are using these in a school setting, a lot of churches out in Nashville that have their own schools, they're using it for STEM. Science in real world use is really what it is. Okay. So it is something that my kids absolutely love to do. My students love to do it because it's really, you're putting that science in a hands-on setting. As I told you, ours are made specifically by Tower Garden by Juice Plus. There are a couple other people who make these, but that is who has the original patent on it. And he actually have his name here. I always forget his name. Tim Blank. So Tim Blank is who originally designed these, and he had them initially at Epcot in Disney. That is where they were prototyped. That's where they were done for the longest time until he started to sell, and they still are there. So that's pretty neat when my students go to Disney and they come back and they get to tell, about seeing these at Epcot. But he is who has really done a lot of trial and error. And in my opinion, this one is the best one. We have a couple other tower gardens that they do not produce the same quality. Okay. So if you're looking into buying one of these, I would absolutely look at this manufacturer. Connie asked about pollination. So pollination, if it's inside, that could be an issue. However, with our lettuce, things like that, we have no issues with that, for obvious reasons. But the other pollination, ours are outside. And so we release ladybugs and butterflies in our greenhouse. So ours really get pollinated because they're started in the greenhouse when we start our spring plant sales. As far as if you're outside, you have it at home, if you've got it out on this little patio out here, then plants around in a flower bed that are pollinators that attract, pollinators to come to them. And we've had zero issues with that, but it kind of depends on what you're growing.
Is the low strawberry yield related to pollination, or?
I think it's related to size. Because the roots are only going to get so big in the tower. And so that's kind of what I think. I've noticed that as we pulled those out, the roots on the strawberries are significantly smaller than our lettuce and any of our herbs. And it's nothing for, like I said, our lettuce, our root system, and I've got a picture on here, it's that long on it versus our strawberry roots may be like that. So I think it's more of the roots become restricted and they don't produce as much yield. That's the only thing that we've kind of looked at. We have noticed also that the pH has to be adjusted much more frequently in strawberries than it does in any of our other produce that we grow. So I don't know if that's it, but we still get a good yield on it, but it's not like our strawberries that are in our raised beds. But the sweetness, the nutrient value we've noticed is significantly more than the raised beds. So it's a trade-off in that regard. But if you're producing for the yield amount for strawberries, from what we have seen and the research we've done on it in the soil still has continued to be better for the yield. So I don't know, the root system on those just doesn't get as big in the towers. So that's kind of where we're at on it. And I'm not sure what that may be, but I prefer in the towers more for now. Yes.
When you harvest your strawberries, do you then take the plants and plant them in the soil?
Nope, we've left them. I say no. At the end of the season, I give them to students to take home because I'm gone for the summer. So they have planted some in the soil, and then we've had some that we just leave. Like right now, there's still 2 towers that have strawberries from last year in it, and we're just continuing the cycle. They're alive, they're green, they look lush, they look good, and this is our first time doing that to see, what is that going to look like as they start to lose their leaves and as they go through winter and the change of that. If we put them in the greenhouse, do they continue to keep their leaves based on the temperature? Just kind of doing some trial and error on that. But I will say some of the other things that we've tried to plant in the soil once they were done for the season did not do well because the root systems are so long, they don't get that big in the soil, but they go into shock. And so we haven't been able to save many things. Our celery actually was the only thing that we were able to transplant from the tower to the soil, and it continued to grow without missing a beat. So, and I don't know if that's just because it's so hardy or what. So any other questions right off? Okay.
The water that you use in that, you use tap water? Or
Yeah.
does that be some kind of?
No. So they say that you should have filtered water for it. Or distilled water, or if you do not have that, put it in your tank and let it sit for 3 days running without any plants in it, go through the nutrients. And so that's what we do. One of my friends that grows in Nashville, she does this commercially, but it's for a nonprofit, and she has a filtration system. So hers are actually all connected together. So if this table is towers, each one in the side, she's just attached an irrigation pipe into the side. And so they're all attached. And so she has the water just running continuously. and it's through a filtration system with the nutrients. So you can do that on a very small scale. I've saw that on a small scale where they have 3. And, you know, if you're handy or you have somebody that's handy in terms of irrigation and connecting that, you actually don't ever have to fill the basin up. It just runs through your filter, like from your tap on a timer through the filtration system. It mixes, dilutes the nutrients in it, and then it just continues to pump into it. So you never fill your basins up. Well, that's the reason that I've never done that. I'm like, that sounds really complicated. And every time I say that to somebody that's done it, they're like, it's not. It saves you so much time because you don't have to check the water levels, and you don't. For me, the students enjoy checking the water levels, doing the pH, putting the nutrients in. It's never been something I needed to do, but I could see where that would be beneficial. So you do not have to use filtered water. Good question. Okay. All right. So I'll send this link to Connie, or somebody can, it's easy to write down, but this is the link, and I'm going to go to it in just a second after I show you some more pictures here. But this is the link where we buy all of our stuff. You do have to go through a vendor. You can't order directly through their website, I don't think. Every time that I've tried to order through their website and add it to cart, it sends me through a vendor. So I just set the school up as a vendor, and we saved a little money that way, but they can hook you up with somebody very easily if this is something you want to do. But these are some of the things, some of the other pictures from our greenhouse. So this is a student, she's just scouting for pests there. But this is where your rock wool sits. There's a little black cup. It's just a little mesh cup. You stick your rock wool in it, and it sits down in these, and that's what the lip of that is. This is at our elementary school. We set these up outside of our 3rd grade classrooms. And so this was an initial stage, and in it we have marigolds. That one has some herbs, lemongrass, lots of different things. It's a mixed tower, so you don't have to grow all the same thing in it. You just have to watch on size to make sure that whatever's growing at the bottom isn't blocking the sun from hitting other plants. But that is over at our 3rd grade. There's a few of the strawberry plants. Those hadn't been started very long. And then you can see in the back here are other towers. And so your basin is about that big. Okay, I know that's approximate, but about that big, nothing crazy. And the cage that's on it, that one we just left on, but we use that primarily for our strawberries. And then when we did our tomato plants in there, you do not have to get the cage. So if you purchase these for your home and you're only doing herbs, leafy greens, I would not do the cage as an extra purchase. So this is one of the lettuce plants. This is very small. So we took these plants over to our 3rd grade class to show. That's probably about a 3-week-old plant. Okay, so the roots are still very small on it. Same thing here. That will be 3 times that size before we harvest. So that's a very young plant that you can see there. And then same thing on this one. This was day 1 when they started those plants. All right, questions? You have any questions on that? Yeah.
So when you speak of herbs, which one?
Rosemary, lavender, lemongrass, lemon balm. Catnip does amazing. Cilantro, I can only grow cilantro successfully in grow towers. You all can probably grow it really well. Mine always does really terrible in the soil, or it tastes terrible. But in the towers, it is phenomenal. Basil, we do basil in it. I mean, there's so many different ones we've done in it, and they all do really well.
What about, oregano likes things drier and basil likes more water?
Yeah, so you
Tower?
can, can, but that's one of the reasons we have so many separate towers. So if we sell a lot of basil at the school, so we'll do a whole tower of just basil. You can change your timer to, instead of every 15 minutes, every 12 minutes, water for 3 minutes, or instead of every 15 minutes, water for 3 minutes. For your things that like to be a little bit, more damp, you can put it to water for 6 minutes. Or, if the oregano, if you want it a little drier, instead of watering every 15 minutes for 3, every 15 minutes for 2. So you can shift your timer based on what it is that you're growing. And what I love about it is I can, I'm so used to growing things directly in the soil, but they provide you so much information and it's like a community forum of Connie gets on and says, hey, I want to grow oregano. I've only grown it in the ground. I want to grow it in the tower. What has worked for you so that I don't lose a whole crop? and they have all the information there for you. And so you just get on, and they already have so much provided that you can do trial and error if you want to, or you can get on and say, this is what I'm growing. I don't want to lose the crop. So here's what I need. And there's a lot of forums and different things. So the customer service end of it is phenomenal. I have found that's really great. Other questions?
What about, you talked about testing for the pH and the nutrients?
Yes.
You talked-
Yeah, so the nutrients, when you put those in per 25 gallon, it tells you directly on the thing there, but it's 250 ml of each is what you put in. And I never add more nutrients until I'm finished with that harvest. The pH, you will have to add either base or acid depending on that. But the nutrients, it's just a liquid nutrient, and the 2 large containers, I think they're a gallon each that they come in, or 2 gallons, that will last me probably a year with 1 tower. So it's, you don't use a whole lot of those. It goes a long way. And then the acid and the base, you can get on your own. You can order it on Amazon, actually a little bit cheaper than you can get through them. But I just order it through them because it also comes with the test kit. So when you add that cost in, it actually ends up being the same. But with the pH, checking that once every 2 weeks, or if you notice like, ooh, that was a little bitter today. I don't, it shouldn't be that bitter, as I pulled off a couple of leaves for a salad. Your pH is probably off. You adjust it, and usually I don't harvest anything from it for 3 days. And then once I do, then it's, good to go at that point. And just like in the soil, you can start to see stress pretty early. If you start to see something like, you're getting brown tips on something, or, something's looking a little purple, something might be a little off. And so you check your pH, and normally that tells you kind of what's going on there. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Can you use this to propagate cuttings, like for shrubs and things of that sort?
I have not. I would say that you probably could, especially things that propagate primarily in water to begin with. My only concern would be is if it gets enough water to keep the initial roots, because all of these things are rooted before you put it in. So, probably, yes, but I wouldn't, I don't know. I don't know if it would get roots quickly on it.
It's a case of doing experiments.
Yeah. And that's what I love about it, is there's so many things that, I'll keep a few of them that's just trial and error. And I tell the kids, I'm okay with if everything in it dies, I'm okay with it, because you're trying to figure out how is it we can save nutrients? How is it we can save water? Different things you can grow. So that's what I do like about it, is good trial and error.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
Where outside is best to put it? And do you have to turn it,
Nope.
to get sun on the whole thing?
No. So if it's against the building, or maybe on your porch, and you notice that, your whole porch doesn't get sun, then yes, it would probably need to be turned in that because of that. But for ours, they're just out in the open. So in the greenhouse, they're getting sun from all sides. And then we have a paver patio that we put the others that's not blocked at all. So, for instance here, if we had it out here where the sun is just barely hitting, yeah, you would probably want to turn it, because this side of it's not going to get enough sunlight. However, if you go between us and that next building and put it directly out there, then no, you don't have to turn it, because it's getting all sides.
So do you mind if I follow up on that? So you put it out in the middle of that cement, it's gonna be super hot.
Yeah.
So how does it do in that environment?
So ours it's a paver patio, and it's a dark, kind of like a beige color. But so if this is the ground here, this is where your basin would be. And then your plants start from here, but your first plant is probably here.
So there's an air.
So yeah, there's an air gap, and it's high enough off that we've never had any issues with it.
And then stability to be out. How do you keep them for the wind from?
The bottom is so heavy, they don't blow over at all. So the plastic they're stacked, but there's metal rods that go down the top, and that's what anchors into the bottom of that basin. The water's in the bottom. Yeah. So I've never had one blow over, ever.
So, okay,
Yeah.
This may be a dumb question, but if we've got a lot of rain lately,
Yeah.
recently, do you turn it off so it doesn't
I do not.
push the water up if it's okay?
Nope. I let it do its own thing. I've never turned that off, because these are at an angle, and right here, if we had a lot of rain, then you may see a little algae growth if the plants are young on top of that rock wool, but as they fill out, these cover each other so much, the water's more reflecting off of the plant, the leaves, rather than soaking into the rock wool. So when they're young though, you can see a little algae growth, and I just use, like a natural algicide if I see that's really becoming a problem, or if they're still young, I'll just pop the plants out, put them in a couple little trays of water overnight with that much water in it. I'll let the tower run, soak it off with a water hose, and then put them back in the next day. And it's just enough that it kind of breaks that barrier of it.
Okay, I'm not advocating people buy from them, but
Right.
price wise, can you give us a ballpark?
Yes. So let's go to their site. And I'll kind of show you.
Oh, wow.
So they have, this site really is, especially if you go to the school gardens part, the resources, before you bought anything, I would go through. They have so many videos on here to watch, lesson plans that before I bought them, I looked through all the lesson plans myself, just because I needed to know how it truly worked. And like I said, I need to know, is this one of those gimmicks that they're just trying to sell you, or is it not? This is one of the commercial greenhouses in California, and you can see how many they have. That is a full-time business for them. But there's so many pictures, so many different things you can look through in terms of resources, really, really good there. So with the prices, shopping, all those things. So this is the interior, the lights that I told you about. But as you purchase it, so this has the rock wool start, has seeds to start, has your plastic little cups that go in here, your nutrients, your pump, all those things. This price is a lot more than what it is outside. Okay, so 85 times 12 is 850 plus, what is that? Almost $1,000. That about right? So that one's a little expensive, but when you come over to this one, this is the one that we have for outside. And so if you're doing this, I would recommend this setup for anybody that's going to purchase for your initial startup. Once you purchase this, you're not going to need all of these things again for a little while. Okay, this comes with enough to keep you busy for 8 months to a year. But it's about $650, $700 with taxes and all. And you can purchase separate. The extension kit. Okay. So these extension kits here, that's for baby greens, or you can purchase the extension combo kit over there. There's a lot of different setups and the prices vary, but so extension kit here, and you can continue to make it taller. Okay. So your initial one, I think it comes with like 6 of the plastic trays. And then if you want to make it taller, you can add your dolly to it. Your timers, all of that, except the dolly comes with it initially. So it is an investment, it is kind of pricey just starting out. But for us, I mean, it has absolutely, we actually started with the Tower Garden, family gardens, what we purchased first. And then we went and purchased the community garden was our next one that we got. But as a family purchasing, I have a family of 6 at my house. So we absolutely get our money's worth from, our one tower. So it is a little pricey, but it's really not that bad once this is your main cost. And then after that, it's very, very low value or money wise to pay every year to keep it going. Okay, question?
Do you recommend it for a family of 2?
I would do the flex growing system. Okay, and that, like I said, that comes with your initial seed. That's like all of your lettuce. And you can use any seed for it. You don't have to use these, but what they do provide is really good quality. We always use the seeds that come with it. And that has your timer, your pump, your initial nutrients, your pH test, your base, your acid, all that. So it is literally everything you need to get started.
What are the base and acid? Are they buffers, liquid?
Yeah, it's just, it's liquid. So I can, no, that's a little small up there, but so that's kind of what that's your nutrient A and B. And you've got your acid here, your pH test kit or in your base. And then this is your rock wool, seed, timer, And then back there is just the tray. Those trays, I will say, are pretty flimsy and they don't last very long. But what Bobby brought me last year, which is, there was an old ice cream plastic container. There was all sorts of different things. You can use anything like that.
So vermiculite.
Yeah, vermiculite for it, and that's just keep your seeds stable on the top. Some good moisture.
The seed outside of the tower.
Yep.
And then, but you put them under the lights, and once they germinate.
So for me, we start ours in the little plastic containers, and that much water is all that you put in the bottom of it. And so that's something that we talked about earlier, is the number one best advice I can give you if you get one of these and you start it is you soak your rock wool at the very beginning, and it has very specific instructions for this, for like 15 minutes. That is the only time your rock wool will ever be completely submerged in water. From that point, once you soak it and then you drain that water out, and then you've got your little containers and you've got, half an inch of water in the bottom, your rock wool is just sitting there. Your seed on top you don't water over top of it. It's soaking that up from the bottom. And then as your roots start to develop, it's so tempting to, I probably need to add more water to this, because as our roots grow, we want to add more water to it, but you don't. You keep that small amount of water in there. Otherwise your roots will rot. And you don't realize that that's happened until you put it in your tower. In 3 weeks, you're like, why do my plants look dead? They're not doing anything. It's because your roots have rotted. So for us in the greenhouse, we just start them on our tables. And then in like the ones they just started, they just stuck them outside. So they're not on a porch or anything. Now, again, if it starts to rain a lot, like she mentioned, then you would need to pull those in or drain your water off, because you don't want those just sitting in water. But if it's not raining, or you can stick them on your porch, just somewhere where they can get some direct sunlight and where the temperature, is 75 or above to really get them started. So you can start them anywhere.
If you're doing this early
Yeah.
spring, February, you use grow lights.
Yes, and I have not ever used grow lights just because we use the greenhouse. I have not used them for this. But yes, you could use grow lights for it. And probably not the light that comes with it. It wouldn't be strong enough to start. But if you had just a basic grow light, would be fine. Or if you had a heat mat to put underneath and stick it by a window, that would work too. Other questions?
Your home unit, you grow the leafy greens all year round, but you don't have lights. Do you have a greenhouse at home, or?
I put them on my porch.
Okay,
So my lettuce, anything like that, it's on my porch. And if it's 25 degrees outside, they're not getting, snowed on. It's okay because it's under my cover. So it doesn't make a difference. And yes, we do have, it's not heated. There's no ventilation on it, but it's just a cold frame. And so, if I want to add more, or if at the greenhouse, if we've got the poinsettias going and I need to get something started, you can stick those in a cold frame. You do not have to have any heat on it. I do recommend ventilation though. I do recommend something that's not just stagnant air, because you could run into some pest problems otherwise.
So you mentioned white flies. Is there something you can do to reduce the white flies that grow the tomatoes?
Yeah, you can use just like you would in your garden. You can use, some dust. You can use different things. For us though, I'm a very strong believer in like butterflies and bees and ladybugs and all those things. So every chance that we get, we're releasing ladybugs, even in our greenhouse and onto our tower. And right now, I don't know, do y'all use ladybugs ever, like for pest control? If you have, they used to be super affordable. Last year, I'm not sure why the price of those went up like everything else, but they were 3 times what we paid the year before. So in a year where their typical just price, it's so affordable. If you have like an enclosed screened-in porch, something like that, release them. And then once you're tired of them, where the smell ladybugs can sometimes fit off, I just open my doors and they're gone within a day or so. So it's a really natural approach to it, which, I like, because the more that you do add on, if you put, 7 dust or you add something else, it can affect your pH more with your nutrient level if it gets into the water. So it doesn't have that soil to absorb it.
It's neem oil that would affect the pH.
So we use neem oil actually pretty frequently, and we really haven't noticed. My general rule of thumb is I use half. If there's anything I'm treating, I use half compared to what I use in the soil. So The neem oil, no, I haven't really noticed a huge change in that. And that is our one that we use most frequently, even not in our grow towers, just in the greenhouse. If we have to use something, that's the one we use. Other questions? All right, well, I will make sure, I'll leave this pulled up here, but then I'll email this or text this to Connie, this link too, so she can send it out. And I am always available for questions. If you look at this and you're starting to order and you just, need to kind of know what has worked for us or what hasn't. As I said, I don't make anything off of this by any means. It's just something that's worked well for us. So hopefully works good for you all too.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Couple items of business. We have an evaluation form that we always like to ask about for our technology and that sort of thing. We just want to hear from you. So if you'll take one of these and fill it out. Also, I'd like to thank Whitney and give you this little, first of all,
Thank you. Did not have to do that.
and then this is a print by Terry, forgot his name, James Chandler. Terry. So,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that greatly. And once we get the towers going at the school, I would love for you all to come down. We do have a new teacher now, but I'm still going to be able to be involved with the program. So once we get that going, it's pretty amazing to see all those growing and the students operating them. So you all are welcome to come down and do a tour and walk through and kind of see that.
I would like that.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, it is pretty neat. And then, they get to then go, they get first thing in the morning and they're eating it at lunch. That quickly. So for them, that's cool, because they get to see that truly.
The more likely to use it.
Yes, yeah, they absolutely are. So it's a good thing.
and there's free vegetables up here if you'd like to take some. They were not grown on the hydroponic system, but fresh vegetables there if you want to take some cucumbers home with you.
Yeah, that would actually, I just say not grown in the system. We do a lunch and learn at the school where we'll have like anybody, like our alumni, or as we're trying to do fundraising, we'll bring them in and they get to make their salad there off the tower. So that'll be something.